Hey everybody, Tim Higgins. A couple of weeks ago, I did a video about MongoDB and how you can interact it with TDM and using Javelin. And if you really paid attention to that video, most of it was done through a batch file, right? So I thought we would do something a little bit different today. And this is going to be a long one. So I know YouTube has this ability to put chapters on things. So I'm kind of hoping that we can figure out how to cut that into pieces. If not, I may cut the video or it may just be a long video because we're going to cover a lot of stuff. What I'm hoping to do is teach you all how to build an extension. Now, I did a couple of videos a while back on doing extensions. I'm going to delete those videos. I know they had quite a few likes, but I'm going to delete them anyway because that was about 3 or 4 years ago, and the video quality really wasn't good. And I've got better at my video quality since then. Now, with saying that, what we're going to do is we're going to build an extension that allows Javelin to actually do CRUD functionalities to Mongo. Now, I know it's not MongoDB, but I'm just going to say Mongo for short. So there's a couple of gotchas. I'm looking at the page. One of the reasons I'm doing this too is all this research is out there, right? You just have to find it. Now, if you go to Test Data Manager, Broadcom, I've got the page open here, develop and deploy custom extensions. This kind of walks you through it, but I'm going to be honest with you, it's very outdated. So what we're going to do is we're going to mimic this first, and then we'll go back and add Mongo to it. So that's why I said maybe we can cut it in chapters, or we may just jump straight into Mongo because this is pretty straightforward, but it kind of helps if you know what this works, what this does. So let's get started. The first of all, you can't, if you notice your references here, the presentation core and the presentation framework for Microsoft really was part of WPF. And it really doesn't exist anymore. Well, it does, but it's changed. So this doesn't work. And if you notice, it says go and download Visual Studio 2012, good luck with that. The Javelin is written on top of the .NET framework, or at least Microsoft. I can't say .NET framework; it may be C++, but well, which technically is .NET these days. But still, it is written on Microsoft, and so therefore it uses Microsoft DLLs quite a lot. This activities was hard to find. This presentation framework was hard to find. Presentation core, but I'm going to show you where to find all that now. So instead of downloading Visual Studio 2012, because it will argue with you about adding these, it'll say that it's not compatible. Now I know there's workarounds and all that, but I'm going to show you the easiest way. Now I'm a huge fan of JetBrains. I've been using JetBrains for years. You can get the Community Edition. Writer is a great program that does .NET. Now it doesn't have the built-in Microsoft stuff. Here's one I did yesterday, but we're going to do one for completely scratch. Of course, I had to build it, make sure I could do it before I did it. So what we're going to do, we're going to say new solution. And here, has to be a class library. Okay, now we'll probably build a console just to test it with. I always do that. But what I was saying is if you come over here and go to developing tools, I pay for the full suite. It's really not 100. I mean, not bad. It's like 200 a year or something for all the programming. And if you see my other videos, I do a lot of Python. So I use it for that. Data Grip, especially in TDM, it's a generic tool that does databasing. So you can do a lot of database stuff with it, which is really cool. In other words, you don't have to open Microsoft SQL, SSMS, to do Microsoft. You don't have to open up Oracle's, whatever the version is called, I forgot. But basically you can open Data Grip and it can support many different data types, including Mongo, which is really cool. And it's right here. I use it because I use it all the time. Here's Python, here's that, Data Grip. Oh, I'm sorry, here's Python, the Data Grip, and the Writer. The other ones are really good if you do Go. Ruby, I studied Ruby, but I didn't really like it. I stayed with Python instead. Same with PHP. It was good probably about 5-10 years ago, but I've kind of walked away from that as well. If you do know my history, I've done a lot of C++ programming in the past. So CLine is great for that. And WebStorm is great for doing just browser stuff. I've used that a lot. Just, if you're using like AngularJS or, any JavaScript frameworks. All this was built on top of IntelliJ. Now, IntelliJ is their Java IDE, and it's a beautiful, wonderful tool. Now, with saying that, where this all started from was way back in the day, they had plugins for Visual Studio. ReSharper was my favorite, and it forced you to program correctly. So it cleaned up the code and stuff like that. A lot of developers use it, which is great. So then I used ReSharper C++, and then I just started using the tools. Okay. But anyway, so let's save that. Let's close this. That's a little marketing point, but the key to that is use the free version, so it's not really marketing, but it saves you a lot of headache. So I did try to get this to work in Visual Studio. I probably spent 2 or 3 hours, and then finally I just said, you know what, I give up. It's not that I couldn't get to the DLLs, it's just Visual Studio was fighting me because the oldest it will let you use is Framework 5, and Framework 5, this has changed, okay? So let's go ahead and start Writer. And that's a good point. So now that Writer's up, let's go ahead. Notice I have this path, C source. I have everything in source. MongoDB. I'm going to change this because yesterday I was doing stuff with it, and I don't want to mess with what I was doing. So we'll say Javelin Extension. Okay. And we'll go ahead and save. We'll make sure everything else is okay. It's okay. We can change it afterwards because you have to. Okay. If you notice there, it forced you to do 5.0. And if you click it into here, your dependencies are going to be based on 5.0, but that's not what we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to go change that. So go to properties. Can I make this bigger? Yeah. Okay, cool. Sorry, it's not there. We want properties on our library. Notice our naming really sucks. So we'll change that here shortly. So let's go to properties. You know what? I'm going to do a new project because our naming is really bad. And it's really hard to rename it afterwards. So let's just say new solution. That's fine. And one of the key tricks that I found that works kind of great is if you stick with the Broadcom naming convention, it kind of makes things look better. So what we'll do is we'll say this is going to be C8. Now you don't have to. You can name it whatever you want to name it. But I'm going to name it Javelin extension. Okay. And then what we'll do is Mongo. Well, this will be our class, right? So instead of class 1, we'll call it Mongo actions. Now back to over here, our SDK is 5. Notice it won't let me change it, 5 or 7. Those are the default ones for Visual Studio. The good thing is you can change them here a lot easier. Notice my framework. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my framework. See, it's not even an option. So I'll show you how to change that too. So that's about it. Yeah, so later on we'll go back and add a console application. But right now we just want to do this one. So we'll say create. And we'll just say new window because we'll trash that one. In fact, let's see if we can go ahead and trash it. I just don't like things lingering because later on when you start moving DLLs, you're like, okay, where was that again? Now, if you're not a C++, I mean, if you're not a Microsoft developer, don't worry about it. Some of these are pretty straightforward to understand. And I'm going to show you where to find, oh, let me delete it. I'm going to show you where to find all these options. So even if you don't know it, it's a lot of copying and pasting too. Okay. So now we've got a class, and I'm going to rename this class, or just create a new class. My new class, we'll call it MongoDB Actions. And the reason we want to do that is because that's what's going to show up inside Javelin. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and create that. And I think that's okay for that. Yeah, that's fine. And I'm going to go delete this one. Again, I don't like things for lingering. So if you don't know how to use Writer, there's a lot of great videos out there. Maybe I'll do a video, but basically you want to refactor this, and in refactoring that, you can safely delete. So we'll go ahead and delete that. That's always good to do, just in case you have references. Now if I go to my dependencies, I notice there's a 5.0. Okay, so what we're going to do is go to properties, and now we're going to change that. So we want to go to language 4.7. Maybe if it lets me do it. Let's see. Let's go up here. Maybe it's framework. So you may have to download the different. Yeah, here we go. You may have to download the different SDKs. So whenever you go, well, let's talk about that for a second because I may be jumping too far. What I would do first is install Visual Studio. If I can spell it, Visual Studio, the Community Edition because it's free. Okay, and in there, make sure you install the proper packs, right, that go with it, the language pack, or not the language packs, but let's see. I'll show you what it is. Visual Studio installer. When you come in here, you want to make sure you install the right package. So notice everything has community. So we'll go to modify, and then in here, you'll once you start picking these, that's fine. Go to individual components. You want to make sure you get your target frameworks, okay? And I'll go ahead and get the SDKs too. So notice I picked some older ones here. That's what you need, okay? Now the fact that I've done that, let's go ahead and close this. Now I can go over here and select 4.7. I think I did 2, maybe. It's either 4.71 or 4.72. Let's try 4.72 first. To me, that sounds familiar. So we'll just stick with it for now. Just say okay. If we have an error, I'll cut the video and we'll go back. But notice now I have 2. That's what I'm going to show you. I have .NET 5.0 and .NET 4.72. I don't want the 5.0. So let's go ahead and say okay. And now okay. And now that's going to change my framework to here. For some reason, Writer's pretty cool. It allows you to have more than one. But the problem is then you got some conflicts with what your dependencies are. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start building out this over here, because I told you you can look at this documentation and follow it. Notice it wants these presentation frameworks. Well, let me show you where they are. So on your C drive, go to Program Files. I think that's where it is. I may have to find it. Microsoft SDKs maybe. Let's see, give me a second. Inside your Visual Studio, it has versions, right? Like version 1, version 2. Let's see if it's in here. Nope. But that's where those DLLs are. You can always say, where is presentation framework? Well, I should have said PC, but that's okay. Let's see. One of these will tell you the path. Yeah, here you go. So this will tell you the path. Notice this framework is 3.0. We're going to do 4.0 because that's what we picked. And now if I go to here, I can see my frameworks. So it's program, reference assemblies, Microsoft. Well, I should have knew that. I'm sorry. Now I can see what's installed. 4.0 is not installed, which is kind of interesting. Where are we at? Are we on? Let's see. Because when I did it, I thought I did. Let's see. Let's go to, actually, you can just go to the root and find it there. Now that we know that's in. And so here, and reference assemblies, Microsoft framework. Huh, odd. Okay, I could have swore that I used 4.0, but maybe not. So let's just go back to, it says use 386. 86. I don't think it matters, to be honest with you, at this point. Let's see, I'm sorry, reference assemblies. And then I told you this video is going to be long. Sorry about that. And from here's framework, and we'll go into, is it in here? Ah, here we go. So in here, we can go to 4.7. I'm doing 4.72, and we'll say type. And now here, I should see presentation. Here we go, presentation core. So here's all those DLLs that you can now include into your project, okay? So let's go ahead and close that. And keep in mind that really was, C programs, reference assemblies, Microsoft framework, .NET, and the version 2.0, because that's what we're using over here. So what I did was I copied what I needed to a drive, right? So I need this one for sure. And we need the presentation framework, which is here. And then we need the system activities, which is here. That one really was hard to find. And we need this presentation. I think system draw and stuff is fine, but if it's in here, we'll go ahead and get it. Drawing, yeah, that's fine. And then drawing design, which is here. System exam, let's see, that should be down here. Yep, it's right there. And then system service model. If you don't know what these are, by all means, look them up. But a lot of them just have to do with how the UI is rendering. So, because that's what XAML is, presentation framework. We used to program this a while back. It's been out for a long, long time. So, in Windows base. So, I'm going to go ahead and grab these. I'm going to copy. Definitely don't cut because your machine's probably using them also. And we'll just create a folder here. We'll call it new folder refs, and we'll place them in now. Now, that's cool for that. Now, the other thing you need is some Javelin stuff. So what we're going to do is look at some, you need the grid tools, Javelin Common. And the easiest way to do that is, now I have everything installed local. So if you don't, then, you have to go find it. What you can do is right click, and say properties, and then open folder. And what we need is, now you'll see a lot more stuff in here. Ignore that because I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes, because a lot of this doesn't come with this. And that's one thing I don't like about this, but I think there's got to be a way around it. I just didn't spend time to research that. But let's see. But worst case, you can install Javelin, right, on one machine and make this work, and you'll be good to go. Let's see. You'll see what I'm talking about when I get to it. It's just managing these DLLs. What am I looking for? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking for Javelin. Let's just see if I can type it in. Javelin, or is it grid tools.javelin? We need the extensions. So this one. Okay, cool. So we'll go ahead and grab it, copy. And we'll go ahead and close that. I probably should have just, that's fine. I'm saying I probably should just put that on my desktop or put a link. Okay, so now we've got that. So now what we can do is go to our imports. We can say references, and we can say add from a file. So we'll do desktop, and we're gonna, oops, not that one, it's the old project. Let's go to refs, go to references, and we'll just grab these. Okay, open. And that's going to add those to our project. And now we're good to go, okay? At least for the base model. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start programming this out. And we're going to keep it stupid simple. So the first thing we want to do is inherit from, oh, let's add our references. That makes it so much easier because then we have, we have the little help there. So using, we need system. The good and bad and ugly is JetBrains knows that you're a developer, even if you're not. So it doesn't help you as much as Visual Studio does. Like, notice these aren't even there. But we need that one. We're going to need component model. Component model. And we're going to need, now I like to do logging. So we're going to do system, if I can type it, .io. That allows us to write to a log file. And then right now we'll just use our grid tools. So using grid tools, notice it helps you now, and we're going to do extensions, which is great. Okay, cool. So now what we're going to do is, not in our namespace, I'm sorry. In our class, we're going to inherit from our Javelin activities, if I remember that correctly, Javelin native, if I can spell it, activity? Let's go look at the thing. So what we're doing, so this says add that, we added those, we added that, that's good. Again, don't follow this. Oh, that's what we need to hear from right there. Okay, so it wasn't too bad off. Maybe I misspelled it. Okay, so it doesn't see it. Why don't you see it? Cannot resolve this. Am I missing one? Let's make sure that we're using our component. So I'm gonna have to save and reclose it. Yep, it's right there. Okay, so let's public class activity. It's kind of odd, it doesn't know what it is. Let's see, action. So I'm going to save and then close. I noticed sometimes that kind of helped recently. I don't know why. Maybe it just needs to repick up. Or you know what? It may be the version types. Oh, it's not Javelin. I'm sorry. I don't know why I did that. Writer. Okay, we're doing this one. Now again, see, now it sees it. That's kind of weird. I guess it has to reestablish the references maybe, but that's fine. Okay, so, oh no, it didn't. All right, I'm going to cheat, and we're not going to use the other app, but I'm going to open the other app so I can see what version I used for it, because that matters. So I'm going to say open, I think it was, let's see, let's just do open, and then we'll do, I'll keep everything on source, and then these are projects I work on all the time, and then I think it's under MongoDB, yeah, okay, and then we did it under extensions. Was it this one? Maybe. Let's see what this one does. New window. Okay, whoops, wasn't that one. Okay, so I need to delete that one. So let's remember that one. So let's do file open. That's what's important, delete these, right? And I may cut this video out just because this is, you really don't care about this. But well, I guess it's important. The one thing I like about these videos is they're not really training videos. You see me working through this on purpose. I was going to try to delete that, but it's not going to delete it while I have it open. You see me working on these on purpose because you're going to run into the same problems I ran into. I know my naming convention was really bad on the other project, like usual. Yeah, it's this one. Okay, so this is the one that worked. So let's say new window. And I guess I could just walk you through this one, but it's better that you see now we can do a lot of code. So, we'll leave this one open and do some copy and pasting because that would save us a lot of time. But let me see what version this project is. So if I do properties on my solution, actually, I'm sorry. I think it's properties here on my version. It's still loading, so give it a second. Let's make sure I didn't fat finger any of these because I'm notorious for doing that. Aha, so maybe we have an issue here. Oh, we didn't include the common DLL. See, I knew there was a reason I screwed up. So let's go back to our Javelin, and then there is a common grid tools. So that's extensions, grid tools, Javelin. There should be a common. There it is. That's what we need. See, it always helps to, and let's minimize this, and let's delete that one. And let's go ahead and add this one over here to our reference. Now, I'm recording this video, so you can go back and look at it, but make sure you know these right here. Again, it's not a big deal. If I took the time and read this, I probably would have saw that I need it. Oh, I do need it right there. So I didn't need the extensions one. I needed the common one, so I added the wrong one. Okay, so that's fine. Let's go references, add from our file, which is on our desktop, references, and then our common, not our extensions. And now it worked. Okay, cool. So I'm not going to open that back up yet. My goal is to show you how this works, and then we'll open that up. Okay. So the first thing it wants to do, this inherits from, let me show you these. Oh, here we go. Here's a complete project. So I guess I could have looked at that, but that's okay. So the first thing it wants to do, we're going to build this, and I'll show you how this works. And then we'll get rid of this, and we'll build our own. So in the required, these are the arguments that get seen in Javelin. So let's go look at Javelin so you know how that works. So inside Javelin, if I just, I'm going to just create a new project. And if I just bring something over, let's not do SV, let's do something simple. Let's do our logging. What's our log? Okay. So if I bring the logging over, these are the properties that get seen, right? And if you notice here, we've got a display, message, and timeout. Some of these are input and some of these are output. Well, that's what these are. Okay, these are the arguments. So I should have a first name input. I should have a second, number, I'm sorry, a number input. And these are integers, right? And then I'm going to sum it up as an output argument. Okay. And then the most important thing that you want to make sure you do is you override the execute method. Now, again, just copy this to get started. It's really not rocket science. Let's minimize this to get some real estate so we can see what we're doing. I think I got too many curly brackets. There we go. Now, with that, what we're going to do is the execute, this gets whatever this value is, okay? The sacket gets whatever this value is. And then our output, what we're going to do is we're going to set our output, okay? Now the contents is the overall that goes in there. So it's kind of like using this if you're a programmer. And then your results is whatever the result is that you want to return back to the user. So let's see how this works. And then we'll go from there. So what we're going to do, that's very simple, pretty elementary. We're going to minimize this. I'm going to just basically build this. Okay, we've got to build. It's telling me some of my, this common uses AMD64. That's fine, doesn't matter. That's not relative. If I should take the time and turn off these messages because I don't really care. The warnings aren't really important to me, even though they should be, but I'm not going to spend time to debug them. So now I came here, we're going to bin, debug, and we're doing, see that 5.0 is there, so let's delete it. Because we're not using 5.0, we're doing 4.7. And the only thing we truly need is this Java extension. So I'm going to copy it. Now here's where it gets tricky. Okay, so we're going to go here. And I don't think the documentation says this. So the documentation definitely tells you to use Visual Studio. You can't use Visual Studio. That's why I use Writer, just because the references, the DLLs don't match up. You have to create a folder if it doesn't exist called extensions. Okay, and then paste it in there. There's the one I used yesterday. Continue. now that it's in here and we have 2, that's going to be fun. But you'll see the difference in a few minutes. Well, I got the dates here, don't I? So we'll remove the other one and add this one. But with saying that, this folder didn't exist. I had to add it, okay? So, and then you have to open and close Javelin quite a few times, which is kind of a cumbersome thing to do, but that's fine. The trick is just add it to your taskbar and delete it when you're done. But what we're going to do is when you go here, then you go to Manage Extensions. Now I can browse to that one, which is here. The one from today is this one. I'm going to open it. And now if I say Show Extensions, it shows me mine. Now the title, that's why I said it's important, notice is MongoDB Actions. And then I can change what folder it falls under. So we'll call one called MongoDB. Okay. And then we're just going to import. And now it's going to tell us to stop and reopen that. That's fine, but what I'm going to do is go remove this one. Okay, because that was one from yesterday. And notice ours shows up there. And we're going to go ahead and close this and reopen it. And then we'll have our magical new extension. Notice now we have a Mongo and we've got Mongo Action. So let's go ahead and say new. And we're just going to drag it over. Now again, this isn't really hard to follow. The documentation for this is online. The downside is that the Visual Studio was off. And the DLLs were really hard to find for that reason. I had to, like I said, download the packages from Visual Studio's installer and then reference those in Writer, who doesn't complain, because Writer's like, you know what, you're an adult. If you don't know what you're doing by now, then oh well. So here is our actions that we are, actually they're called arguments. But if we go look at our arguments, we have the 2, first name and second name. These are required, which means I have to put something in there. So if you used Javelin enough, you'll notice that it says, hey, you got a problem here. That's where that comes from, is that required. So what we'll do is we'll say 1 and 2, and now our sum, we're going to put a variable, and we'll just create a variable called sum var, does that work? And I think it's an integer. I'll show you where to see that in a few seconds. Technically you would have wrote that, but yeah, it's an integer, okay? So what we're going to do is now put that, notice we still have the error because we have to put that here. And then what we'll do is we'll write that out to here, just so we can see it. Look, we have, have a custom extension with the number of, I'm trying to be cool, plus, and then our variable. And it's going to be plain because it's not a string, so we'll say toString. There we go. And now we'll just save this, and I'll save it to the desktop, and we'll call it maybe test flows. How's that? Now, it's really hard to bounce between best practices between, we'll call this MongoDB. Best practices between Python and C#, because in Python, everything likes to be lowercase with underscores, and C# doesn't like that. It does. It doesn't care, but it does say, hey, you're not matching your naming convention. So if I hit just run, so now we've got a number of 3. So that's it. It really works like that. And the other one, that's all these are too, right? These are just custom extensions. But now let's go clean this thing up. So I'm going to close that. And now we're going to do some Mongo stuff. So again, if you don't really know this, I recommend spending time, just kind of look through it. The only downside, like they even show you how to change the UI. I don't know if you can do that anymore. I'm not going to spend the time to do that because what I built is pretty, like you can change your widget icon. What I built works for me. So if you really, yeah, it takes you right there to put extensions. Okay. But if you really want to mess with this, then by all means go for it. Just be careful with setting it up. What I found was the beginning part of this wasn't true. Okay, this wasn't true. To an extent, it was true. It's just hard. Like downloading Visual Studio 2012. Yeah, like I said, it's 2023. Microsoft doesn't really give you much of an option anymore. So it's the whole force of upgrading. So we're going to close all that. Now, here's where I would probably cut the video if I feel like it's too long, because now we're going to do some Mongo stuff. Now with Mongo, yes, you guessed it, we have to download the Mongo driver, which I did for you already. So if you don't know how, just Google it. Well, you know, Mongo has some great documentation. So let's look at it. So what you can say is Mongo. So we're going to do CRUD functionalities, right? So our goal here, let's just go ahead and clean some of this up and then we'll talk about it. So our goal here is to do CRUD on Mongo through our extensions. So therefore, we need a couple methods. So what we're going to do is we're going to close this, and we're going to do our first method is just going to be a very simple, so if you don't know CRUD methods, think about it as, there's going to be a get. So I'm going to make everything public, so in case we need to run a command line tool to test it, but you don't have to. You can, is pass, no, it's not. What'd you say, var temp equals, pass is Python, sorry. But you have to have something in there. So let me see what's going on. Give me one second, because it says we don't have our right. But that's going to say we're missing one. Give me 1 second just to play dumb. Do we have the right number in here? 1, 2, that closes that off. Notice we got try catch, because I do that in everything. Not sure. So let's just add it here. And what do you want? Oh, we don't have a return. Duh. That's what I want. So we'll just say return nothing. That should work. Okay. The reason it did that is because I declared it as a string. And it's like, hey, dummy, you can't do that. But what we're going to do is we can go ahead and, you know what? Let's leave these alone for now, because I'm going to use this one as a template and then copy and paste for the other ones. But what we need, we can go ahead and do this just to plan for our actions. What we need is we need a get, a post. Well, okay, let's not do HTTP methods. We'll just do CRUD. So get, insert, and see CRUD is create. Well, that's insert. Okay, so that's fine. Create. We may use the word create, but that's okay. We can play with it when we get to it. Update and delete. Okay, so those are going to be our methods. Now, let's go ahead and just make this pretty and just say do. Okay, there we go. Perfect. Now, the first thing we want to do is we want to declare what is it going to take to make Mongo work for us. Okay, so in here in our arguments, we're going to need things like we need our URL, we need our database, that's going to be common, and then we need our collection, okay? And what I was going to say is if you do MongoDB C#, there's some great references out there, but I would stick with Mongo. Here we go. Now here, what you can do is you can go through here, but we're going to do our own. And you can find the DLLs that you need to download, and they kind of help you do that. These are pretty good, so we may stick with those fundamentals. And the point is, there's so much more you can do that I'm even going to care about doing, okay? But seeing that, I'm just going to go get the DLLs that I already downloaded. And actually, I'm going to cheat because I had a deploy folder yesterday. I'll probably delete it. No, it's in here. Okay, cool. And the deployment always gives the DLLs with you. All these other DLLs came, and you don't need them, but I'll tell you where they came from shortly. But we do need this driver, and we do need this one, okay? So we're going to go ahead and copy those, and we're going to go put those in our project. So we'll put these here in our references, paste, and now let's go to our project. And we may need more, but we're going to stick with those for now. And like I said, I did this yesterday, but I'm probably going to forget some things, but I'm going to try to make this quick. Oh, the drawing's there, but that's okay. I'm not going to add the drawing if I don't need it. Let's see. Now we're back in our references. What we need is our Mongo. We definitely need that one and this one. So let's go ahead and add those. Okay, so let's go ahead and collapse that back. And let's add them up here. So we don't need the component model right now. It may want to ask, you know what, we'll clean it up at the end because it may ask for it afterwards. But let's say here for Javelin, and then here for MongoDB. Okay, so the first thing we need is the Mongo driver. Okay, and then what we're C# always has to have a semicolon at the end. And then what we need also, because we're going to mess with their JSON, is the basin. Okay, if you don't know what that is, that's kind of their version of JSON. But you know, you can do a lot of research on that. It's a lot more detailed, but I don't want to go down that pipeline. These kind of bug me, so we're going to get rid of that. It's just saying you don't need that namespace because you already have it up here. Okay. Now what we need to do is create some arguments. So the first argument that I want to create, and these are required, it's kind of cute to put it all in one line, but I don't want that because this is required. There's also this concept of a description. So we're going to put that in there, description, and then here we're going to say MongoDB URL. Okay, so that's going to be our first one. So let's go ahead and we're going to make it a string. Okay, that's why I'm wanting to do this and not just copy and paste, because you kind of see it better when you're doing it, right? Versus just copy and pasting. Because a lot of people do videos and they just copy and paste. And when they do that, you're like, okay, how did he do that? Or they missed something important. So we'll just call these MongoDB URL. That works for me. And this is going to be the connection. And how I know that is this is, you know, you open up the atlas here, or the compass, I'm sorry. We need this. So that's your URL, okay? So we're going to go ahead and connect. And what we're going to look at is the concept of, I think, sample guides. Nope. Is it training? One of these, yeah, grades. Okay. So there was a good example online. Notice I got, what, 10,000? No, 100,002. Okay. So there was a good example online that did this example. So we're going to stick with that concept just for now. The good news is I kind of already know it. So we're going to stick with it. I don't know when you put a space there, so let's not do that. But we need a couple of these. Okay. So let's go ahead and grab this and let's get some real estate, and we'll skip a line there, skip a line there. Actually, I don't like skipping lines. So we'll do this and we'll call this our input parameters. Okay, input, well, we'll call them arguments. Parameters, arguments, tomato, tomato, what are you going to call them? So that's that one, and we'll just use the concept here. So the next one's going to be database, right? Because you need a database that you're pulling from. Okay, and we'll just connection with some Mongo database. Okay, and technically I should make a capital C there just to be consistent. Whoops, I didn't for some reason. Okay, there we go. It's also kind of weird going from a Windows to a Mac. So Mongo URL, this one needs to be our collection. And we're going to talk about our data in a few minutes because that gets kind of tricky, what we need to pass in. Okay, collection. And then what we're going to do is we need the ability for the user to tell us what they want to do. So we're going to call this one action performed. Okay, action perform, and we'll call this action. Okay, fair enough. And they're all strings. Let's get rid of, well, we'll leave the output for now. Let's think. Let's go ahead and work on this. I do want to pass in a save, which is just going to be a JSON. So we'll say save data, and we'll call, I'm thinking, okay, so save data. No, let's just rename it completely. Save data. Now, if you know how that works, you can pass in, again, we can go here, find a document. We're working on our get, okay? So this is our get method here. And with our get, we need to pass in a filter. Now, if you look here, the filter is kind of weird. So if I want to do a filter on student ID, it really wants it as a JSON format too. And now I can find it and it's going to give me those filters. Now I have 10 of those, okay? But we need to build this filter. So what I'm going to do is do this, because if you think about, I need my filter to give me data. So let's go ahead and we'll call this filter value, because it's a key value situation. Now, truth is, you could make these as JSON, and I did a video out there on doing REST with HTTP, and in there I mess with JSON. If you need to be, I can do that when I can do it again or share it. But again, this video is going to be long, and I'm going to try to clean it up. We need a value. Now notice I'm making all these required on purpose. even the ones that aren't needed for this track, because you're not going to use the same one every time. Like I'm not going to pass in save data and to the get method. But what I realized in Javelin, not everything can be null, because if you don't put an equals, you know, an empty string in there, it passes at null, and that kind of doesn't do right. So filter key value. You know what? Yeah, I did do that one backward, didn't I? In other words, key should go first. So we'll save. That's fine. We'll take care of that situation right here. And we'll just put it above this one. So this will be, let's go ahead and put some notations in here. For saving data, pass in JSON string. Note could pass in JSON. And we'll talk about that in a minute because I did play with that one quite a few times yesterday to make it perfect. Now here, needed for a filter key value. Okay, actually let's key value, because it is a JSON and we'll just do it like that. Okay, perfect. So we're going to do one for update as well, but let's just get it going. Let's go ahead and change this as well. I'm okay with it being in one line. No, because I want a description. Like it's fine in one line if you don't put a description, but it gets pretty ugly whenever you try to do a description on it. So what we'll do, we'll just call this one requested data from MongoDB. Okay, and we're going to rename it. So this is going to be maybe just return data. And then here we're going to put this as a string. All right, cool. Now we got some stuff going on.